Previously on Cycle 99. All right, landlubbers, looks like we're at just about cruising altitude. Welcome to your first day aboard the Bannockburn. A small splinter of wood poked out. Higgs's hand jumped back from the wood as the lightning zinged down it, like a static electric shock. Oh, static shock, Young muttered with a light laugh, but the cold, clear water hit their damaged pupil like a lightning strike. A broken, mystical lighthouse is not my area of expertise. And see, this is why I knew it should have been Thatch. Your pocket watch, now stolen, passed from the twins to Kelvin's friends at university, Priya and Thatch. Instead, Thatch ran their fingers over the face of the pocket watch, feeling how it had shattered. But you've heard his prayers in the night. Azalaïs, je viens. Thatch Argyll's adventure began when their bedroom exploded. I think we've done it! And then, there was light. Pie? Thatch was in need of some inspiration. What did you do? Episode 6, A Googie Monstrosity. Cycle 99 is a swashbuckling adventure story about extinction, magic, and hope where you design the characters. Chapters release every Tuesday. Visit patreon.com/Pitchpine Productions for free to vote on chapter and character polls. This story is family-friendly, but may contain occasional strong language and mild violence. Welcome aboard the airship Bannockburn. Oh, Thatch. They don't know what's coming, do they? And I can't even warn them. Okay. I need to see what you saw, the story you were told about what happened. At least in the case of Cycle 98, we're on equal footing, you and I. I don't remember a lot of it either, especially the early days. The clouds marched across the sky over Thatch's head, and the air currents shifted just enough to deliver to Thatch a sweet smell on a warm breeze. Well, I guess I'd better go see what that's about, Thatch muttered to themselves. They clutched the pocket watch tightly in their hand and followed the smell with their nose in the air. The creek had broadened into a rushing river, and as Thatch continued to follow it, great stones began to crop up on either side. Thatch scrambled over the boulders clumsily, calloused fingers sliding against the smooth surfaces. They examined the type of stone critically, regretting their mediocre grades in geology. As the sun beat down, Thatch paused, perched atop a proper sitting rock. The slab was balanced on several others, and the river trickled through beneath them, calling and echoing like the clucking of birds. No, wait. Thatch shook their head and peered between the rocks, blinking away the scalding sunlight to better examine what lurked within. Sure enough, there they were. Even the uninformed could have identified a pair of ducks, male and female. But Thatch was far from uninformed. Their eyes took in eider-like black markings along the plumage, then widened at the collar of black feathers that circled the male's neck. The ducks' bills were tipped in black, as though they had been dipped in ink. Thatch leaned down, trying to get a closer look at the female, but she was comfortably hidden in the small nook created by the shoreline rocks. Well, you can't be Labrador ducks, Thatch informed the pair, who burbled back at them. That makes no sense. Thatch straightened up and sighed, longing for their trusty birding book. Their thoughts left it unclear whether the nonsensicality of this encounter was due to the fact that Labrador ducks had been native to North America, and Thatch was loath to imagine that this magical island was part of North America, although they would have accepted Canada in a pinch, or due to the fact that Labrador ducks had been extinct since 1875. But if these ducks were Labrador ducks? Thatch flipped to the least singed page of their sketchbook, drew a nub of a pencil from their pocket, and then began to sketch. By the time Thatch had finished their quick sketch of the Labrador ducks, sweat was running down their back from the bright sun, and the smell of pie had only grown more present and more inviting. Thatch tucked away their sketchbook and pencil and took a water break. They were getting tired, and hunger had begun to gnaw at their stomach. They'd rolled their sleeves up to their elbows and had taken off their sneakers to dip their feet in the cool, running water. Feeling thus refreshed, Thatch clambered across the rocks toward the grassy meadow, then followed the smell where it curled tantalizingly around the curving edge of the dark jungle. Nestled casually in the crook of the meadow's elbow, where the jungle continued to grow deeper, darker, and taller on Thatch's left and the river dipped down on their right, was the very picture of a 1950s American diner with a shiny sign proclaiming its name, Aunt Betty's. A Googie monstrosity, Aunt Betty's was all silver glass and bright red neon paint on the outside, and the view through the windows promised similarly crimson vinyl booth seating within. Incongruous, however, with the diner's classic style was the great wooden water wheel attached to one side, churning away as the river, deeper here, ran its marathon course over the landscape. Outside was Aunt Betty herself, a woman in her 50s wearing 2 knee braces as she weeded a vegetable garden on her hands and knees. Perched on the diner kitchen's windowsill sat a perfect pie with a single slice cut out of it, wafting its buttery deliciousness into the air like a siren song. Similarly perched beside the pie on the same windowsill was a woman. A beautiful woman, nay, the most beautiful woman, and the cleverest. She never looked more beautiful than now, stuffing her face with Aunt Betty's pie, a smudge of vanilla ice cream across her nose. The spoonful of berry red filling traveled gracefully towards the pink lips of Azalaïs Daltier. Her fingers carried the calluses of 2 decades' adventures, and a red flower from Betty's garden was woven into her hair, a loose cloud of zigzag coils. She was, as always, luminous, her brown skin the color of new light, like where a firefly's flicker meets a summer evening, or like when night gives way to dawn. She was clad in a long brown duster over a white cotton blouse, tight riding pants, and brown leather boots. Azalaïs let out a great belly laugh, the most beautiful sound, at something Aunt Betty said, and then her forehead furrowed, the most beautiful sight, when she spotted Thatch. The plate of half-eaten pie clattered to the windowsill as Azalaïs slammed it down and leapt from her perch. The noise startled Aunt Betty, whose hand went to her lower back, and Azalaïs quickly helped her to her feet. She pointed excitedly at Thatch, and Aunt Betty squinted to make them out on the sloping hillside. She called out some sort of greeting, but it was quickly submerged in the clatter and rush of the water wheel. Thrilled at the prospect of pie, Thatch scurried down the hill with nary a suspicion lurking in their mind. Aunt Betty brushed off her boxy, floral print dress and pulled her gardening gloves from her hands, her skin freckled and blemished with age, crow's feet gathered at her eyes, wispy hair pulled into a small bun atop her head. Once Thatch was within earshot, Azalaïs called out another greeting. "Hello," she trilled. "Do you speak English?" "Hi, yeah," Thatch called back. Sorry, You're not sure how you got here." Azalaïs filled in quickly. "You've just arrived?" "I think so," Thatch answered. "I'm really not sure, Azalaïs," Azalaïs offered. "And this is Aunt Betty." "I gathered that much," Thatch said awkwardly, and shook Azalaïs's hand. "I'm Thatch Argyle." When they turned to Aunt Betty, she swept them into her arms with a motherly hug and planted a wet smack of a kiss to their cheek. With just as much vigor, she released them and checked them over critically. "Poor thing, you must be starved," Aunt Betty clucked. "Come here, sweetheart. Let's get you something to eat." "Pie?" Thatch asked hopefully. Aunt Betty laughed. "I was thinking something with a little more protein in it, but yes, you can have a slice of pie too. Azza's already dipped into this one, but I've got a few more in the oven. Speaking of, I'd better go check on them." Aunt Betty disappeared through the swinging doors, which caused the swooping silver and glass panes to throw the sun's light all across the meadow. Azalaïs looked Thatch up and down, though her once-over felt less like it held motherly care and more like Thatch was an intriguing mechanism she'd like to puzzle out. Thatch felt intimidated. Azalaïs, older than Thatch by a decade or 2, lacked the youthful uncertainty that plagued most of Thatch's decision-making. "So, you've just arrived?" she asked. "Just yesterday, yeah," Thatch said. "No idea what happened. You're the first people I've met." "Really?" Azalaïs asked, reclaiming her perch on the windowsill and her plate of pie. Thatch sank down on one of the flat stones that formed a pathway to the door of the diner. They ran one hand along the smooth divot worn into the pathway stones from decades of heroes treading across them. "Yeah," Thatch enthused. "1 minute, I was working on—" But Thatch's instincts returned to them at this exact moment, and they stumbled over the word pocket watch, changing gears in a heartbeat. "A uni project, and there was this huge light, and I was lying in the meadow about a day's walk from here, my clothes still smoking." Azalais arched an eyebrow at them. "And you have no idea what caused the explosion?" No," Thatch lied. "I'm always tinkering with things. Half the time I've no idea what I'm even doing." Aunt Betty returned. She cut a slice of the berry pie and shoveled it onto the plate, then handed it and a fork to Thatch. "Chicken pot pies are in the oven," Aunt Betty explained. "But I figured if there was ever a time to be a little naughty and have dessert before dinner—" She smiled, then settled into an outdoor rocking chair carved from the same jungle wood as the water wheel. "Well, I say chicken, but there's a few different birds in there. It all tastes like chicken, though, not to worry." Thatch nodded and didn't bring up the Labrador ducks, not wanting to offend. They were enjoying the crisp tartness of the berries. In the shade of the jungle with a belly full of pie, Thatch began to relax. Their eye hadn't hurt at all since they'd rinsed it with the river water, but it had left them off-kilter, compensating for reduced vision. Yet even this could hardly quash the lifting, floating feeling that carried them along, a sense that adventure was afoot and that they were on the cusp of something new and exciting. "I'm beginning to think I somehow just exploded myself across the Atlantic," Thatch quipped. "I saw some North American ducks along the way, and your diner feels right out of a film." Aunt Betty laughed. "Well, that's a story and a half, I'll tell you. But no, dearie, you're not in America." Azalais leveled Thatch with that same calculating look. "Did you ever hear stories of a lost island? Atlantis, that sort of thing?" Thatch nodded. "When you exploded yourself?" Azalais continued, though her acerbic tone on exploded suggested she had several more thoughts about that. "You did travel across space. You mentioned light. That's how all of us got here one way or another." "It is?" Thatch wondered, mind racing. "Are you really there?" Thatch's thought was buoyed on a prayer, and it reached your ears. "Have I found it?" But there was a more pressing question to voice aloud. "So where is here?" Now Azalais smiled. She cupped a hand around her mouth conspiratorially. "I've always wanted to do this." She glanced at Aunt Betty, who waved at her to continue. "You're doing just swell, dearie," Betty said, examining her latest crop of zucchini piled in a small wicker basket beside her chair. "All right, then." Azalais puffed herself up importantly. "Welcome, Thatch Argyle, to quite a ways," she said with great seriousness. "She needs your help." Which of Thatch's prayers will you answer? Visit the Patreon to choose. Cycle 99 is written, created, and produced by Hannah Semmelhack. The theme song is The Boy and the Kite by Solitude. To vote on end of chapter and character creation polls for free, visit patreon.com/pitchpineproductions. If you want to chat with me or with other fans, join our Discord, link in the description. Thank you to my lovely beta readers, Fiona, Aaron, and Paige, and to Basil, official lorekeeper. Special thanks to Seraph and CK. And thank you for reading, listening, and voting. May Fate's 4 winds carry you back to our skies again soon.